RDA told a very interesting story today. I don't think he meant it to be interesting. I think RDA was just making a comment. Look, what he was talking about is he is picking Gilbert Burns to dethrone Kamaru Usman. Now, RDA made it very clear, I'm a homer. Gilbert's a good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, we go all the way back to the second grade. We were in school together. I was best friends with his brother. I've known him this whole time. He was just telling a story. But I picked up on it and go, wait a minute, RDA, this is fascinating. You're telling me two kids in Brazil in the same grade happened to decide somewhere along the way that they were going to pursue a sport with the same life goal, make it to the highest of levels. RDA, a former champion, Gilbert Burns, ranked number one win away from being a world champion in the same weight class? You got to be kidding. What are the odds of that? That is remarkable. I mean, even if you both had the same dream and one of you made it, maybe one of you didn't, or let's say you both made it. But then you're just going to happen to also be in the same weight. You just grow up your whole life and you weigh the same thing. I mean, there's a lot that happened there. I found this so interesting. And I've seen things like this. Bob Shamrock, when he used to bring kids in, Ken and Frank, by example, names that you guys would know, but he was bringing them in to teach them the same thing. He was using martial arts and competition and hard work as a way of putting focus on and taking energy away from troubled youth. Great recipe by Bob Shamrock, by the way, but you could see why then those guys grew up. And maybe the Gracies would be another fine example, where you just come from a family of this and everybody kind of finds their way and what their different levels of success are, but this is what the family does and they go in this direction. I think that you would understand that these were two classmates that happened to be friends. Two of the Burnses make it. RDA makes it. Same ages, same sport, same organization, same opportunity, in the same weight class. That's a very bizarre coincidence. It's one of these really random things. And then as you do start to look at that fight, and RDA was very clear, this is a popularity contest for me, and I'm riding with this guy. But when you do look at that fight, I don't know that I've seen anybody break down the X's and O's yet. And that is a really tough match because you're largely just left with perception. Okay, whose performances have looked better? Because you can't really get into the weeds that, well, if it stays on the feet, that's going to favor Kamaru. And if it goes to the ground, don't forget Burns was third in Abu Dhabi and he could submit him. And it's not really as simple as that. I mean, if you go look at Burns as just his last performance, and what do we know about this sport? You're only going to be judged by your last performance. If you go look at that, though, I mean, Burns did some pretty fine work in the stand-up. If you go look at Kamaru's last fight, it never hit the ground once. Colby never tried to take him down, and Usman never tried to take Colby down. They both just said, to hell with it. I respect your resume in wrestling. You respect mine. Let's go to fisticuffs. I mean, I'm just saying, the make-believe built-in narrative that one guy's got to get it down and one guy has it stand up, we don't actually know. And you don't actually know who the better striker is between those two guys. You don't even know who's better on paper with a resume. You could argue the resume, wrestling-wise, would of course go to Usman, and you could wrestle submission-wise, of course, goes to Gilbert, but you can't argue who's better at either one of those. I mean, right, there's just enough intangibles, there's just enough moving parts, so then what do you default to? Do you want to have a narrative to give some kind of analysis? What do you have to default to? Hunger. Who wants it more? That's something that we don't actually know and know how to categorize. We could just go by perception that, well, Kamaru's already done it and Gilbert hasn't, so I would assume that Gilbert would want it more. But we don't know that Kamaru didn't get a taste of something that he really liked and wants to cling to it. We don't actually know. It's a very, very peculiar matchup. Now, when you don't know as the viewer, who and how do you assess to give an opinion based on a prediction? In this case, we do have two guys that do happen to know. We have two guys that know. They got a very good idea. That's Gilbert and that's Usman, and not based on confidence within themselves. These guys are teammates. They have boxed together, sparring, kickboxed together, sparring, wrestling, sparring, live goes. submissions, live, go, put it all together, done mixed martial arts. They've done this every single possible way that you could do it. Now, there is a rumor, this is being held pretty close to the vest, but there is a rumor that Usman is leaving that camp and going full-time to Colorado with Trevor Whitman. Let's say that's true. At some point, Burns is going to ask certain people to corner him, and Usman's going to make that ask. Until that ask is done, we will not know how these camps are separated. But if the coaches who trained Usman, studied him day in and day out, know his tendencies better than anybody, including his own sparring partner Burns, decide to go with Burns, that is an interesting leg up. Are we splitting hairs here? Yeah. Is it only this much of a leg up? Yeah. But championships are won by this much. Championships are won in centimeters. The goods and the great. Go watch a race sometime. The difference between first and second is well less than a second. Go watch a gymnastics meet one time. You're talking about tenths, hundredths of points. The same is true in MMA. It's just not as clear. It's just not as clear. I don't know what tendencies Usman has. I've watched him. He looks complete, fast. I really don't see any holes in his games. Burns, as of late, I got to give him the same compliment, but I would trust that coaches do know. Coaches could even know an athlete better than Usman knows. Usman may move his left hand before he throws his right, just as an example, that he doesn't even know he does that, and his coaches do. That's an interesting talking point going into this match, and it will also be interesting as these two guys start talking. Man, look, Gilbert called Usman out, which would lead you to believe that Gilbert liked whatever he felt in those sparring sessions. Usman accepted on the spot, which would lead you to believe Usman liked what he felt in those sparring sessions. I'm just suggesting for you, as this fight gets closer and this story starts to get told, I know this is going to be a very good fight. Talking about a very big fight, the only definition of a big fight is interest from the fans. There is a story here to be told. I will predict for you, as the weeks come, as this fight gets closer, this one, mark my word, this is going to be a big fight.